Hey traders, Raghi here, and what we're going to do here in this short video is review the morning's day trades. Now, whether you're with me in the chat room in the morning or not, one of the things that we do every Tuesday and Thursday is do the day trading where we take a look at the clearing range breaches. Now, just to give you an idea of when I'm looking for these trades, it's really quite specific. It's starting at about 10 o'clock. Now, I say about 10 because what we're looking for is a breach, and the breach can only happen after 10 once we get the high and low of the first 30 minutes after the open. That's what's known as the clearing, by the way. So if I head on over here, this is 10:30 and then 11. So you really want to keep an eye on the clock when we're doing this. So we get our high-low range, and that orange area, this, or whatever you want to call that color, that is the clearing range, both in time, the 30 minutes, and in height, the high to low. So once we get a break through resistance like this, then we have what's known as bullish bias. We're only looking to the long side. Now, for our purposes here, the cutoff is 11:30. I'm not looking for really anything after 11:30 with this particular setup or these particular lines and levels. So anything that happens after this, I mean, this is basically just kind of imagine it as just, I'm not interested. So I'm just going to put a giant X over this. All right. So it's really between about 9:30 to 10 to look at the highs and lows, and then 10 to an 11:30 cutoff. All right. So what we had is the breach. I'll call that BR. And then it opens up either a retest of that level, which we have right here, or a retreat. Now, we flat out ran out of time here. So you could argue this was a retreat back in here, but it's after 11:30, so that's no. So the only thing we could look for is a pullback to the level right here. And it's so deep into what we call a Bermuda Triangle, which occurs between 11 and 11:30. Most of you will forego this, but let's also realize that if you were to buy this pullback to the same level of the clearing range high, which is essentially here, your first upside target isn't much more than looking at where we might have already retraced to the upside. So this is the Dow, by the way. This is the Dow. So do I love a lot here? I really don't. It's so late in the session. If you take it, it's a tricky one to manage, and I think most of you realize that it just really didn't go anywhere for us. And if anything, we pushed the validity of the trade. We didn't break it, by the way. Despite the sell-off here, that did not break the validity of the trade in here. But gosh, it just you can see that when these things are setting up so late into the session, it just isn't really worth taking. Now, one other level was the pullback to the wave after the breach, and that's another level that you can look at a buy. It's buy only once this breaches to the long side. All right, next up, we'll go a little quicker clip here now that you know what the setups are. The Russell. The Russell breached right here. You can see, much like the Dow, it retreated a little bit, but what we really had was a little bit more of a retest. That's this right here. And unlike the Dow, we saw that retest happen pretty late. So again, another reason to say thanks but no thanks. This one just happened to have followed through to the upside really nicely. So there you go. I mean, there you have two setups that were happening late in the session. And so here's what I'm going to tell you. You go, Rog, is it a buy or not? If you're going to take the Dow buy, you got to take the Russell buy as well. If you're not going to take the Dow buy, then don't take the Russell one either. So you play the probabilities, and if you're comfortable with the retest, which is what this is right here, then you play it whenever you see it. I think if you start to cherry pick these setups, you're going to find that, it's inevitable. It's almost like, okay, whatever I take is the one that's not going to work. How many of you felt that before, right? So keep that in mind. So if you're going to take an aggressive deep into the Bermuda Triangle between 11 and 11:30 entry on the Dow, you got to take it on the Russell as well. And when you look at it net, you're fine, right? Those actually, if you hung on to the point of validity, kind of a wonky day for the Dow, but it was terrific for the Russell. All right, so here's the NAS. Now the NAS broke to the downside, which means that I'm looking for a bounce and then a correction either into the VWAP cluster or the Fibonacci, right? These are the 618, 50, and 382. Either way, you can look at this as number one, you can look at this as number two, you can look at this as aggressive, you can look at this as moderate, conservative is up here. However you want to look at it, these are both valid entries. They are going to be taken to the clearing range low, and then we took a second target at 80.75, and then we just basically said, hey, if we can get a shot at 80.55, that was target number 3. The NASDAQ was fantastic. 3 targets, 2 entries, really 3 if you want to take the retest in here, but the moderate and that moderate zone's a really nice one. It cuts your risk in half. And so 3 entries, really nice one. So far, the Dow is the only one that took us on kind of a wild ride. So far, really doing pretty good. Now, finally, the ES. Not much to say about the ES. It never breached. Therefore, there's no reason to enter. And that is a summary of the day trades from this morning. The 3 different entries: breach, retest, and retreat. And we actually look at 3 different times to do this: 9:35, 9:45, and 10, right, in terms of the different cutoffs for potential breach retreat or breach retests. But since we don't have the propulsion dots validating the 9:45 or the 9:35, it's 10 o'clock. These are the trades, and I really recommend most of you to focus on the trades that occur after the clearing range breach and focus on retests, but primarily retreats. And those are the ones where it comes back to the VWAP cluster or comes back to that Fibonacci 382, 50, and 618. All right, that's the summary, and I'll see you in the next update.